So thank you everyone for joining us today on our first ever cooking demonstration on Zoom here at the Senior Resource Center. We are so excited to have Ellen Connor and Ryan Gibbs joining us today to bring you an exciting recipe. And I know you're gonna love all of the entertainment they have planned for you today. So Ryan and Ellen, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Kelly. A pleasure to be here. I'm sure Ryan would say the same.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I want to thank everyone out there that is joining us and allowing us to Zoom from our kitchen to yours. Of course, Ryan here is the chef for today, and he works here at the Senior Resource Center in our nutrition program, providing the meals for our homebound seniors as well as our on-site driving seniors. So any given day, Monday through Friday, he's doing at least 800 meals for us. So quite a daunting task, I would think. I'm not sure how he can fix for only a serving of 4, but I'm sure he's got it under control. So during this past year, we certainly have had a lot of stressful situations in our life, but cooking should not be one of them. So Ryan and I joined forces to provide you some cooking ideas that we hope you enjoy, find easy to make, and really enjoy this time with us. So Ryan, we've been together, what, 8, 10 years, something like that?
We've been together many, many years.
Many, many years. Absolutely.
We've
gone through kitchen renovations together. We've gone through hurricanes, working here as well as other sites. Certainly COVID and all the adjustments that we've made with that. But really, Ryan, did you think we would ever have our own cooking show?
You know, I never thought we were going to make it to this point. We had this goal, I think, from day one. Not necessarily a cooking show, but just to get through the day. This is an awesome opportunity and project, and this is many years in. So, you know, this is just another, you know, to add on our list. And I think this is one of the coolest projects that we've taken on. So, obviously, everyone that's joining us today, this is the infancy stage. This is our round 1. This is our trial. So you're seeing this as organic as it could possibly be. And again, this is our first run. So it may not be perfect, but we're glad to have you with us. And I think you'll enjoy the program that we have ahead.
Now, we've known each other so long, but I can't believe that I have never asked you before, what brought you into cooking? Why, when, and why did you choose cooking as your career?
So cooking is something that I've always found an interest in. And I think a lot of people who enjoy food, you know, typically like to cook themselves. And I come from a family, on my mother's side, her parents were actually Cuban immigrants, and when I spent some time with them as a young child, and
Oh, Ryan.
fresh is the only way we serve. Sorry, the chickens are making noise in the background. We'll handle that in just a moment.
Oh, goodness gracious.
But anyways, you know, being in a household where cooking was the center of the household and the entertainment, and that's pretty much how people, the family got together. You would have extended family as far in the main family in one unit in the kitchen, and everybody had their own responsibilities, whether it be chopping, whether it be cleaning, whether it be roasting the beef or cooking the rice and beans. There was always something that someone was obligated to do, and that's kind of how I got my start. And ever since then, I've been working in restaurants, hotels, country clubs. I actually went to school for finance, but I found myself back in the kitchen doing this. So obviously it's a passion of mine, and I'm here, and I've been here for quite a while. I don't plan on leaving, and I'm glad I have a family here at the Senior Center.
What's your first memory of cooking? Either alongside maybe a family member or your own time?
Again, this goes back to, my childhood, living in South Florida, in a city called Fort Lauderdale. And a couple things that come to mind is the house that we lived in, it's almost like tropical paradise there. So you had your avocados trees, you had your lime trees, you had your orange trees, you had your mango trees. So any given meal, we would have fresh avocados we'd pick right off the vine. We'd have fresh orange juice that we could make on a Sunday morning, squeeze on a Sunday morning. We could have mangoes sliced and skinned and cut for a late afternoon snack. So those things, seeing it almost farm to table at that age, just drew all types of interest, from the point of seeing it grow off a tree or a bush, and then process, clean, and then onto a plate. So to see that process, to live that process, I think that obviously brought about a lot of passion and a lot of interest and just instinct. I guess a lot of instinct to celebrate my meals, to cook, to provide, and just to share good food and good times whenever I get the opportunity to do so.
Thank you.
All right.
Very, very healthy foods you're talking about back there growing up with. So that kind of set the standard for probably for your healthy cooking and enjoyment of it.
Yeah. It wasn't, my story wasn't I worked at McDonald's for my first job and that was my memory. Mine was a little bit different from most. And I try and deliver a product that I'm proud of every day, and that meets, a healthy standard, a benchmark that, everyone could be happy with and feel, good after eating, and a delicious product that everyone enjoys, every time they get a meal in front of them. So, do we want to start on the meal today?
We do, but we want to hear from you. Towards the end of the program, there certainly will be time for you to kind of let us know what you would like for us to do here during these cooking shows. So don't hesitate to use the chat box anytime through the program. So, Ryan?
Okay, so the meal that we are going to prepare today, we thought about this quite a bit before we started the program, and we tried to deliver something that is sort of like that fits with winter, sort of like a soul food, comfort food that we do offer on the menu. And I try to pick something that was simple and something that was quick to prepare and something that was cost effective. So the meal we decided on was chicken and dumplings. And again, chicken and dumplings is kind of a household staple in the South. And I wanted to present to you how I prepare it, and hopefully you can just dig in and kind of take some thought into the process in which I do it. You may prepare this meal at home, but again, we're just going to take the most streamlined preparation standards that I do, and then see how we can gear it to what you would prepare at home and have an understanding of what works, what doesn't work, and what makes sense. I'm just going to hold up the recipe really quick on a flat board. And this is basically as simple as you can get. You got chicken and dumplings. I got 1 pound of chicken breast, 3/4 pounds of frozen cut biscuits, 48 ounces of low sodium chicken broth, 3 packs of chicken gravy, seasonings to taste, salt, white pepper, onion powder, black pepper. We will post this recipe later on in the archive, but I just wanted to give you a quick glimpse of what we are going to start with. The first thing that you want to do whenever preparing chicken and dumplings is you want to go ahead and cook your chicken. I have your all white white meat chicken breast, which I'm going to boil. I will boil this for about 8 to 10 minutes. And then once it's ready, I will cool it and get ready to shred. Just tossing it. I will change out my gloves. And the next thing, we will start the gravy. The gravy is very simple for this recipe and very easy. Here's our low sodium chicken broth, 48 ounces. I'm gonna mix this in a huge measuring cup because this is all I have. And then bring anything from home. So everything is on a large scale, especially when you're cooking for 800 people. We make tons of this stuff. We cook a couple 100 pounds of chicken. We cook hundreds of pounds of biscuits when we make this meal before it goes out. And when I say biscuits, that is going to be the dough. Okay. So I got to remember, instead of saying biscuits, it's dumplings when you prepare it in a boiling broth. So I start with the low sodium chicken broth. Very simple. 3 Pioneer chicken gravy mixes. I will add these and whisk them in. I'll get my cooker heating up. Flip the breaker here. Uh-oh. Thank you. Yes, a little bit of technical difficulty here. And we're back in action here. There we go. All right, sorry about that. We'll work on these details on the next one, but for the first round, we're going to deal with a couple technical difficulties until we get it going. All right, here we go. All right, we're going to add the last gravy mix and get this whisked in before we start heating it up, getting it ready for the dumplings to be boiled. And when we prepare the frozen biscuits, what we're doing is we're thawing the biscuits for maybe 2 or 3 minutes. And then we're cutting them into 4, 5, 6, just basically small pieces, bite-sized pieces, because they will expand upon boiling. And they will cook into the most wonderful dumplings. If you've had this meal at home, or if you've had this meal here, this is honestly the best approach. A lot of people use pastry strips. Some people use canned dumplings, but from my experience and a lot of others, the best product that delivers the best bite, a savory, delicious dumpling would be the frozen biscuit dough.
That is a whip, Ryan.
Yeah, sorry. When you're making large scale products, you always need good tools. And this is my favorite whisk right here. I whisk a lot of stuff with this. Gravies, sauces, whatever you can think of. This whisk delivers. Ellen, can you just make sure that this top is heating correctly? Here we go. Yeah, as hot as it can go. Now, as we are heating up our chicken, heating up our gravy, we are basically getting everything prepared and letting everything cook. Again, the chicken's only going to take about 10 minutes. And then the biscuit dough, once started cooking, is probably going to take about 5 minutes. I'm actually going to move this one onto the burner range behind me. I'm actually going to move this one to the burner range behind me as well, just for the sake that our cooktops don't seem to be working under the circuit breaker that we have. In the meantime, what I want to do is discuss chicken and dumplings and some of the history of it, and give you some insight into, the geography, where it comes from. And I'm gonna let Ellen take over for now while I do my little bit of cooking, prepping, and getting you ready for the final meal.
All right, thank you, Ryan, and thank you for your improv here. Always need to be able to adapt to any situation. So, first off, what's the first thought when you think of chicken and dumplings? What comes to mind? I know, with me, I think about my mom and chicken and dumplings that she made. I think about, that comfort food. It's kind of what, certain what we're bringing to you today. But how about you? Is that something that you remember fixing at home with your kids? Did you help your mom with it, your grandma? Did she have a favorite recipe? Do you have any fond memories of that? You want to put in the chat box? That would be great. And that's like a steaming plate of chicken and dumplings. But is it rooted in that? We tend to think that, but actually it goes further back. There are stories about dumplings and Great Depression, and certainly those were times that we were trying to extend whatever meat protein we had with other things. So that was certainly a time that they were used. But actually, it goes back to China, and it was Zhang Jin, who was a Chinese physician that came up with the first dumpling recipe. And this was around 200 BC, 200 AD, sometime around that time period. And he was a practitioner that came up with this using mutton, different herbs, and chili. It was during a very harsh winter that they were having. And he came up with this combination that he then stuffed in dough, and the herbs were supposed to help with blood circulation, and then of course the chili to provide some warmth. So that's supposedly the first introduction of dumplings. Go further forward from that, 1600s in Europe, the Germans, they believe it's the German origin of the dumpling. But if you come to our country here, we first heard about dumplings in the 1830s, 1840s. Actually, there was a couple of cookbooks that were put out. First was the Kentucky Housewife Cookbook. Then a few years later was the Virginia Housewife Cookbook. And then a few later years, it was the North Carolina Housewife Cookbook.
Housewife Cookbook. That's what I grew up on. That's where I get all my recipes.
All right. Well, it was a good choice.
Yes, excellent choice.
But it begs the question, is this the same person, the same housewife, running from state to state? So let's look at the dumpling, and certainly many cultures have their version. Think about the Italians and their ravioli, their gnocchi. And then we have the Brazilian empanadas. We have the Polish roast beef, the English hot dog.
Ellen, we're having trouble hearing you.
I'll be back over in one moment.
Okay.
And
Sorry
that's
about
what the
that.
difference is. We have to be, yeah, we're sharing a Bluetooth ear speaker, so we kind of have to keep. We can't get too distance, but we can't get too close. You know, we gotta figure this out. By the way, chicken is ready. I'll be peeling and pulling chicken while she keeps going through the history of the chicken and dumplings.
All right, okay. So did you hear about all the different cultural dumplings? The Italian, did you hear all of that or not?
When you first started talking about the Italians, then you started cutting out. So if you could just
Okay.
repeat that
All
out.
right, okay, thank you. The Italians have their ravioli and gnocchi. The Brazilians have their empanadas. The Polish have their pierogi. Jewish, the matzo balls, and the Chinese, of course, the plastic. So, you know, thinking about all the different cultures around the world that have their own version, pretty cool because you think, you know, food is certainly something that unifies everyone. And I think we can all attribute that to just who does that. It's pretty exciting. What do you think? What do you think, Brian? What came first, the chicken or the dumpling?
My argument is the chicken because I don't understand how a dumpling is going to come before the chicken.
Well,
Because you know, all animals are descendant of the dinosaurs, correct?
that's what they say.
But again, in this meal, it's all going to blend together and be extremely delicious. And right now, I've added my dumplings, my biscuit dough dumplings to the gravy. These are going to cook for about 3 to 5 minutes. And as they're cooking, they're just boiling the dough, puffing the dough up. This is such a simple recipe and so easy to execute. In the meantime, again, I'm just pulling the chicken. You have to let it cool down just a little bit. But once you get it cool enough, you have a couple gloves, maybe forks, whatever's the easiest way for you to do it. It only takes a few minutes to get your chicken prepped and ready to go for the final dish, which is added once upon dumplings being fully cooked, which is right around the corner.
Ryan, while you're working on that chicken, can you tell us, do you ever add vegetables to this dish? Like in with your chicken and dumplings?
Yeah, many people like to do this dish in many different ways. And a lot of people do like to use vegetables. I typically don't use vegetables just for the sake of keeping it as simple as possible because we service so many people and I want to avoid any dislikes and as many dislikes as possible. So we go again with the simplest, but the vegetables that a lot of people that I've seen use is the celery and the carrot, possibly onion, and that's about it. I mean, you can add whatever you'd like, honestly. It's pretty wide open. Whatever you find delicious, whatever your preference is, feel free to put it in there. Because again, this is as simple as chicken noodle soup. This may be a take. Actually, I would say the chicken noodle soup is a take on the chicken and dumplings. If you look at between those two dishes, what came first. But again, it's a matter of preference. And if you want to add something in there, add it in there. Now, it may not be considered traditional, but again, I've seen so many takes on this dish that I can't say one way versus another way is right or wrong. So you do what you want to do, but we're going to start off with my recipe, which is as basic as you could possibly get, as simple and as easy as you could possibly execute.
Ryan, I was watching you there with the chicken. Do you have an idea of how many pounds of chicken the average American consumes in a year?
Ellen, I wouldn't be able to tell you that.
Well, 98 pounds of chicken the average American consumes every year.
98 pounds. Let me think. That means Ellen must consume her whole weight in chicken.
Well,
Is that correct?
Well, I do eat a lot of chicken.
Well, you must eat a lot because that's pretty much you on an entire scale. How about that? 98. That's basically a whole Ellen in chicken, everybody. Can you imagine? All right, so We're almost ready. This is how quick we prepared this meal, which is pretty amazing. I'm going to bring this a little bit closer because it's hard to see from that angle, but we have already got our broth and we have boiled our dumplings. The meal is pretty much ready. Pretty quick, very easy, savory and delicious. We go ahead and add our chicken and mix it in. The last thing I'm going to do is I have my pre-mixed seasonings, which is white pepper, black pepper, onion powder, and a little bit of salt. Very simple, and adding it in. Mixing it, getting it basically an even mix of the chicken throughout the dish. And it looks like we're pretty much ready to go. I'm going to go ahead and portion some of these into a bowl, and we do have a taste tester here. This gentleman's name is Mr. Tom.
Tom is a staff member here at the Senior Resource Center. He's our transportation coordinator, and he has been a godsend during COVID. He's helped out every department, every program here at the Senior Resource Center, and he is kind of a connoisseur of food, so we thought he would be the perfect person to try it. Thank you, Tom.
Fantastic, good deal.
Now it's going to be a little hot, so don't burn your mouth.
I'm gonna give it just a second. Wow, that's very good, delicious. Just like Mom used to make.
Mom, that's what we're going for.
Very good, I highly recommend this.
Savory,
Delicious.
delicious,
Nice thick sauce.
hot,
Nice thick.
warm. It's a perfect winter meal.
It's a great deal for
And,
today.
and how long did it take me to make?
15 minutes, 20 at the most.
Yeah, that's actually quicker than 30 minutes that we had budgeted in. So that's pretty, honestly, pretty quick, pretty easy. And again, I'm gonna show you the final product. I'm just gonna get it very close to the camera. And when you look at this, without trying to spill this on the camera, you have your chicken, your pulled white meat chicken, your broth with sticking with the gravy mix, and then you have your dumplings. I mean, you can't get any more simple, but you can't get any easier to execute. And it's a meal that everybody enjoys, especially in a cold winter day. And a day like this where it's raining, this is something that really makes you feel better about yourself. And this is a meal that can be, flexible in any way, shape, or form to meet your sort of dietary requirements or specific needs or preferences. And we're going to discuss that a little bit right now, just to give you some concepts of what you can do and how you can prepare this meal a little bit differently for like particular wants or needs, specifically cholesterol, sodium levels, whether you want vegetables or whether you not want vegetables, what you may have in your cooler, whether you're gluten-free. And I'm just going to let Ellen just kind of give you a few of those tips. She's got some notes to cover that, and she could just kind of pinpoint. And if you have any specific questions, feel free to put it in the comment box, please.
Okay, all right. So one thing you mentioned was sodium level. So this has a moderate amount of sodium in it, but if you want to further reduce the sodium, there are certain options that you can do. Ryan did use low sodium chicken broth, so that would be number one. Your chicken itself is not high in sodium because you've used fresh chicken. Ours was really fresh chicken.
Yes.
Yes. And the gravy mix, that would have some salt in it, some sodium in it. But what you could do would be to make your own cornstarch for thickener, and then different herbs and seasoning. Just about any seasoning you have on the shelf, probably, or if you're growing. But thyme would be great, oregano, chives, parsley. I think a lot of recipes do call for parsley, dill, sage. There's so many different herbs that you could put in there to add that special flavoring. So that would be some options for low sodium.
And then for those who are trying to avoid the gluten, because the gluten, the gluten allergy and those who are gluten sensitive, that seems to be something that becomes a popular subject nowadays. We do have plenty of options as far as that's concerned, and you can walk us through that.
Yeah, so this is, I don't know if any of you do have wheat sensitivities, or whether you have celiac screw that you do need to avoid gluten. But this is an all-purpose baking flour, and it is made from garbanzo bean flour, potato starch, tapioca flour, whole grain sorghum flour, fava bean flour. Anyway, I made dumplings with this last night, and they turned out great. There's hardly any difference between this and what Ryan made today as far as the texture of the dumpling. We do have a recipe for the gluten-free biscuits that we will be having online as well. So there is that.
And again, not only, and if you want to avoid preparing your own dumplings from scratch, which a lot of people would that may scare them away, it's quite easy. And in Ellen's recipe, you'll see that it takes little time and little effort to create those. But if you absolutely wanted to go the quickest route, there are frozen pizza or bread doughs that you can find at your local grocery store that are gluten-free as well. So it would be the same process as pulling the dough, like I did with the biscuits, letting them thaw, cutting them into quarters or small pieces, and dropping them the same way. Same concept. It's just, again, you could do it a million different ways. And we'll just go into this, before we start the questions. From a price breakdown, I was thinking, this is another thing that I want to make sure that whatever meal we do, we want to make sure that it's budget friendly, because anytime I go to the grocery store, I'm looking for the best deal. If I'm at Harris Teeter, I'm looking at the Vic specials. If I go to Walmart, I'm just looking for the biggest, best bulk price. I'm a shopper, and that's just kind of inherent in what I do and how I do things. And this meal in itself, just to give you, a concept of what I spent and exactly what it would break down to per serving. Chicken breast right now, again, you're averaging around $2.93 a pound. So we'll say that's $3 a pound. And I'm just going to add this, and maybe you're not following me on the equation, but again, on the archive, you kind of see the breakdown. The biscuits, I bought the Mary B's biscuits, comes 20 to a pack. And that's $3.96 for 20 of those. I was using 3/4 of a pound. That's 6 biscuits. It's about $1.20 in biscuits. The gravy mixes were 88 cents a piece. I used 3 gravy mixes. Again, this is probably not the most price efficient route, but again, this is the easiest, most simplistic route. And I used 3 of those for $2.64. Chicken broth is running around $2.16. You divide it by 4, possibly 5. Well, let's go with 4, and you're looking at about $2.25 a serving. And when I say $2.25 a serving, that is a hefty serving. So you can feed a family of 4 for under $9 for chicken and dumplings. And that's why it's been popular forever throughout the Great Depression, through the history. It's one of those meals that's, again, so easy to go to. And obviously, flour of any kind is easy to source. And if you're looking at livestock, chicken is obviously one of the easiest animals to harvest or to basically reproduce. So you look at all these things, and that kind of gives you an explanation of the history and why it's made its way through so many cultures and so many different versions. But again, here in the South, here in North Carolina, the one meal that we're all familiar with and that we can hopefully share, some story or another in the past is, again, our chicken and dumplings of the South. So that's right. So I think that covers, the main topics, and obviously we want to give Kelly the opportunity to address the guest and maybe answer some questions.
Yes, so I have a few questions that have been typed to me in the chat box, so I'm just going to go ahead with those. First, Ryan, if you could repeat the name of the biscuits that you used, that you recommended. Was it Mary B's?
Mary B's. Now, when you're looking, there's not going to be too many frozen biscuit doughs in the grocery store. There's going to be typically a Pillsbury and a Mary B's. And those two brands, Mary B's, Mary, and then B, apostrophe S, Mary B's. That's the one I like to use. It's a traditional Southern recipe. It's the most economical one, typically the best value, and it's usually in your freezer section with where you would find like the garlic breads, possibly the pie shells, and sometimes it kind of sits side by side with maybe the frozen pizzas as well. If you could navigate your way kind of through the store, it should be easy to find. So
Thank you. And the Pioneer chicken gravy, is that the brand that you prefer, the gravy, or does it really matter what brand that they use?
so with the chicken gravy, I mean, all you're looking for is a little extra flavor and a thickener. And what you can typically do is you're looking for a gravy that is going, for this recipe, you're looking at a gravy mix that is going to match the fluid ounces. Now, I don't want to get too deep into the math, but typical chicken gravy mixes at the store make about 2 cups of gravy. So one, basically it's 2 cups of water, 1 pack, 2 cups of gravy. Okay. 2 cups equals 16 fluid ounces. And I don't want to make it too complicated. And again, we'll archive this, but basically off your recipe, you're trying to match it up to how many fluid ounces you want to make. So if you say a 48 fluid ounces of chicken broth, you're going to say, well, that gives me how many cups of broth? And that gives me 6 cups of, and 6 cups is going to be 3 packs of 1.67 ounce gravy mix. Now, that's a little too much information, but the idea is you can use any gravy mix that you want. I would stick to turkey or some sort of poultry, obviously, because that's the flavor that you're going to want to go with. But again, you could always just take a broth, cook it down, season it, and then use a cornstarch, flour roux, whatever thickener you may prefer. You could even use gluten-free flour as your thickener. Rice flour, tapioca, potato flour, cornstarch, all of that works. All of that works. And that can let you determine the least amount of sodium you want to use, the amount of seasonings you want to use to season your own. But again, like I said, you take this recipe, we're giving you the most simplistic approach. The easiest way of doing it is buying your pre-made gravy mixes. And all you got to do is most of them make 2 cups. Every 2 cups is going to be 16 ounces of fluid ounces. And then you match up that math. It's a little bit of work on that equation side. But like I said, if you run it pretty even with the way I do it, the most of the retail packs are going to be 1.67 ounce, and it's going to follow that recipe. So you can use any gravy mix that you possibly want.
Now, you mentioned the broth, and sometimes for this recipe, I would get a rotisserie chicken, and I would debone it, and then use the bones to make broth. And that's one way, because this is more involved.
For the chefs that really want to do it from scratch, like Ellen, she's going to be boiling bones, which again, you could take this a whole nother level. You could be boiling bones for a couple of days, rolling your own dough. I mean, you could be killing your own chicken,
We did that already.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, we already did that, but we're gonna leave that out. We're trying again, simple, but again, you could boil. I mean, you can make your own broth. You can use, we were thinking of, Ellen and I were talking about the million different ways that you could do this. You think about all the turkey you have left over after Thanksgiving. Imagine that. Okay, well, you could use turkey. You use roasted turkeys. You boil a whole chicken. You can use canned, diced chicken. I mean, you could even get to the point where you don't even need the barely heat one thing at all you got to do is heat that gravy to the dumplings, open up a can of chicken, and then you're ready to go. So again, there's so many different ways to look at it, so many different turns, so many different angles you can look at, and I really I'm interested to at least share what we do on a scale that's pretty incredible, and then just have people kind of be flexible, kind of relate it to what they want and their needs, and we'll be willing to kind of walk them through whatever way we can adjust our recipes or give you any sort of advice to make it your own.
Thank you. So I do have a couple more questions, Ellen, if you don't mind, Ellen and Ryan. So Ryan, does this recipe freeze okay? Like, could you
Yeah.
make a big batch of this and freeze it?
I would say it would do just fine. I mean, the only tricky part would obviously be how are you going to package it. I would personally probably use gallon Ziploc bags, sit them upright, cool them in your cooler, or have them cool before you put them in those bags. And then when you put them in the freezer, just make sure they're sitting upright. And that's typically how I like to freeze any sort of stews, sauces, soups, anything that is that's basically has some liquid component to it. I like to do that for two reasons. One, it takes up less space. Two, when you pull it out, it's very easy to thaw, and that's just my preference, and I think that's the easiest and the best way to do it.
Thank you. And I just have one more. So if you were to make this at home, would you serve it by itself or would you serve it with a side dish?
Oh, I'll take that question.
That's Ellen's.
Yes. So I would certainly have a side dish with that. It's wonderful in itself, but we are looking at healthy choices and a balanced meal. And I did want to share with you the plate. We all grew up, well, not Ryan, he's much younger, but I grew up with the basic 4 food groups. And then you may have heard about that way back.
Food groups.
Grandmother. And then we had the food pyramid. Remember the food pyramid? We had all of these servings of breads and grains at the bottom, like 9 to 11. You're supposed to eat a day. Well, you know what happened with that. We have increases in diabetes, obesity, heart disease, because it really wasn't a balanced diet or balanced intake. I really don't like it. So now they have the My Plate method of healthy eating, and they do suggest when you eat a smaller plate. And so this is like a salad plate or a dessert, a little bit bigger for dessert. That would be an awesome dessert plate.
Yes, that's what I was thinking that was, but I was obviously mistaken. That she's meaning the meal. So I'm sorry. Okay, go ahead. Okay.
So sandwich or salad plate. So anyway, you're gonna cut it in fourths. Okay, and you're going to have 1/4 dumplings, okay, 1/4 of the chicken, but then you have the rest of your plate here. So what are we going to fill that out with? So for a healthy portion control intake, ideally, you're going to fill this up with vegetables. Okay, you could have green beans and carrots, maybe broccoli and a side salad, but you're going to have like half of your intake be vegetables because they're so healthy for us. And then you think, well, where does the fruit belong? But typically, we think, now we're thinking of maybe more of fruit for snacks or for a dessert. So ideally, yes, you would be serving. And when we have it here, we certainly serve it with a fruit and vegetable to make it a complete meal. And that also makes a healthy intake if you're watching your blood sugars. In fact, that's what the Diabetes Association prefers for intake is, again, 1/4 protein, 1/4 of a starch of some kind, and then half your plate vegetables.
Thank you. Those are the only questions that I have. I'm going to ask the audience again. You're welcome to unmute yourself if you would like, rather than to type a question in the chat box. If you have a question for Ryan or Ellen regarding the recipe that they're sharing today, or anything nutrition wise for Ellen, now's your opportunity.
Can you, you said half the plate vegetables. What about fruits? What part should be fruit?
Well, you could have part of your fruit here. And actually, the My Plate guideline does have a quarter vegetable and a quarter fruit. I prefer half the plate vegetable and then using fruit for your dessert. That's my preference. And actually, the American Diabetes Association does suggest that. So it's that you could use it along on your plate, with your meal, or again, as a dessert or a snack in between meals.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very
Good
much.
question. Did we have any favorite memories of chicken and dumplings when you were growing up that anyone would want to share? Well, Ryan, do you want to tell us a little bit more about what you do?
Yeah. So
You do so much.
okay, so we'll kind of close it up with a little more about the program and just give you a little bit more familiarity of what we do, how we do it. Just dig in a little bit more so you kind of understand the scale of what we got going on. So my company operates with contract, coinciding with the federal requirements and grant funding that puts on these programs. And we work aside staff of New Hanover County, some volunteers, and I have my own staff here with me daily. Typically 1 or 2 people is what we average, including myself. I have another kitchen that does the same thing, but services Sampson County Meals on Wheels, Onslow County Meals on Wheels, a couple of healthcare facilities. So we do very similar meals to what we do here, if not the same meal. And it's a large production, large scale. We typically get, I think you got to think what we're putting out is about a pound of food per person. So if we got 800 clients we're serving here, well, that's about 800 pounds of food prepared and consumed, sent out through how many routes on what's the average amount of routes?
34 routes right now. And we're always looking for volunteer drivers, by the way.
So 34 routes delivering maybe between 10 and 20 households. So just a huge scale delivery, production. The other kitchen is doing about 500 meals. So together, both of my kitchens are doing about 12 to 1,500 pounds of food, delivering to over, I think at one point we were at 23 zip codes daily within a 3-hour time window. So the idea of this program is to provide nutrition and meals to those in need and to those who can't prepare it themselves. And when I first got into this, I didn't imagine that this was something that I would take a huge amount of interest in and really start to understand the clientele and the need for it. But now that I understand the need and the clientele and the team effort that goes together with not only New Hanover County employees, my employees, staff throughout Southeast North Carolina, but the amount of volunteers that are there daily that sacrifice the time on their hands, it's such a program that demands a focus and really requires a lot of dedication, and it's self-fulfilling, and it's a program, and it's a lifestyle and a profession where you actually feel like you're helping people out on a daily, and it's great. So that gives you an idea of what we do. I also start early. I started 3:30 in the morning. So again, we got to cook these meals. We got fire going, pots, clean the dishes, trucks coming in, delivering food. So it's a busy operation. And, if there's ever any interest in seeing the operation, obviously you could probably get with Ellen and she can give you a tour or possibly get you signed up for maybe a day of just volunteering and just seeing anything. So, we're here to service you and anybody else that may be interested in any sort of questions or needs when it comes to nutrition. So.
Thank you. Ellen and Ryan, Gwen has a question for you. So Gwen, if you'd like to unmute yourself.
Yes, I would like to know, are you the guys that fix the meals that they pick up at the senior citizens building, the lunches that are being prepared? Are you guys preparing those meals?
Yes, so that is us. That is definitely us.
We're doing the
Okay.
drive-through
Oh,
here,
okay.
as well as at Veterans Park. We have a drive-through site there. And then one up at Castle Hayne Baptist Church. So we're doing about 300 drive-through meals
Okay.
every day.
Okay. My husband and I have gotten meals there a couple of times, lunches there, and they are very good.
Okay,
That's Ryan.
thank you, ma'am. I appreciate the compliment.
Okay, all right.
So Ellen and Ryan, do you have an idea of what you're cooking next month? And do we have any suggestions from our audience as well? Do you guys have an idea of what you're making for us?
Well, we talked about that a little bit, and it is National Nutrition Month, so it probably would be helpful to be something nutritious. But we really wanted to hear from you all to see what you might be interested in, because that's what we want to do. We want to provide you with, the skills or the ideas of what would appeal to you to prepare at home. So any thoughts out there?
Any dietary specific needs that you're trying to focus on? Obviously, we heard cholesterol earlier, so I mean, we could kind of focus on heart healthy diet, obviously. But if there's any specifics, we could touch on any sort of wants or needs that you possibly have. So.
This time of year, I love soups and any kind of beans.
I was thinking about beans because they're certainly healthy, heart healthy. They're good for the environment because you're not using animals. And so, and it would certainly fall in within National Nutrition Month. So maybe some bean recipe of some sort.
We could definitely do a bean recipe. We could maybe look at like a full course of a meal with sides and maybe some cold preparation, and hopefully get our cooking operation a little bit better prepared for the capacity that we have to go with. So that's a wonderful idea, and I think we'll go with that at minimum. We'll look at some bean and recipes, dishes, as well as sides.
Awesome.
Ryan, I know your butternut squash soup is amazing too.
Oh,
So
yeah.
Oh,
I haven't made that, but we could do butternut squash soup. That's delicious.
it is. It's very good.
That sounds awesome.
Of course. So we'll what we'll do is, again, we'll take ideas for the next week or two. I mean, it takes us about a week to prep the concept and the recipes, and then we could go from there. So we'll have a discussion. We'll take any ideas, any sort of themes that anybody may think of, and we'll run with those themes, and we'll put together hopefully a program that's new and improved and just fun to watch. So
Thank you all.
any other comments or questions? Thank you all for joining us today.
Looks like we have a gentleman in the corner.
Oh, yes, sir. Mr. James, do you have a question?
I'm just hungry now.
That's good. That means Ryan did his job.
Excellent. Well,
Ryan was successful.
perfect. Well, thank you. Handshakes. Thank you.
So thank you guys for joining us. If you have suggestions on recipes for Ellen and Ryan to share next month, or if you have a question for them to answer, comments about our programming today, please reach out to us at the Senior Resource Center. The phone number is 910-798-6400. You can ask for Ellen or myself. My name is Kelly. I'm another one of the program managers here. Thank you for joining us. We will be sharing the recipe and this video on our website as well. So hope to see you again next month. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone. Have a
Bye.
wonderful evening. Bye.
Bye.